this video, we're going to learn how to set up our services. So to do that, we're going to go into our left-hand navigation here. We're going to go to Operations. And at the top here, we're going to select Services. Now, basically what we're doing in services is we're just telling the system which services your shop offers. So you'll see here, I have a list of services. Yours will likely be blank, but I'll show you how to add new services. To add a new service, click plus new services. And here you can start typing in whatever you like. So for example, if I wanted to look for a cabin air filter service, I would just type it in, and you'll see there's a cabin air filter remove and replace. So I'll select that service that I want to offer it, and I'm going to hit save. And you'll now see that cabin air filter is in my list. We recommend always starting with services that are in the default list. So you're always going to want to come into here first and search for a service. All of these services in the default list are automatically already attached to certain part types. And there's already OEM maintenance schedules that are linked to these specific services. So definitely try to find an existing service. There are, of course, going to be services that aren't in here, but we can talk about that next. So make sure when you're in here, you can look for your oil filter, for example, cabin air, and most of the key ones are all going to be in here. Now, if you type something that doesn't come up, so for example, let's look up let's say I do chip repair. Windshield chip repair, and nothing comes up for chip repair. So that's okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a custom service. So in the top right hand corner, I can hit plus custom service. And here I can enter the name of the custom service I want to offer. So in this case, let's say I want to offer a chip repair service. So I type in the name, and I'm simply going to click save. Okay, and now you'll see there's my chip repair service. So you can add services with that button. You can delete any of these services with the little garbage can sign. That's setting your services. Now next, if you click on View Operation Access, you'll see which of your operations or shops or mobile vans have access to this service. So in this case, I have 4 shops. So I can decide, yeah, all 4 of these are going to offer my chip repair, or maybe one of these shops isn't, so I'm going to remove that one because I don't want it to offer chip repair. If you only have 1 shop, this is much simpler, and you'll just see 1 shop. So that's setting your services. Now, you can skip on to the next step. That's the basics of things, and then in the next step, we're going to create our packages, and packages are kind of the parent figure that are going to hold services. However, there's a few more things you can do within services. So like I said, for most new users, skip on to packages and come back to this afterwards. But next I'm going to walk through how you can add additional service configurations to these services. So what are service configurations? So service level configurations let you do 2 things. Number 1, they let you set your own recommendation frequencies. Or number 2, they let you modify how inventory items show up when you're servicing a vehicle. So I'll walk you through this. To add a service configuration, you're going to click Service Configurations and hit Add New Service Configuration. You can name the configuration whatever you like, but there's 2 key types. So first, let's talk about service frequency. As I mentioned, our system is linked up with Motor, and all of the OEM recommendations come through Motor and from the OEMs. So oil changes and filters and all that information in terms of service frequency comes from the OEM. If you don't set anything here, that's totally fine, and all of those OEM recommendations are going to flow through into the services that you've already said you offer. However, if you wanted to set your own manual service frequency, this is where you would do it. So for example, let's say I want to create a service configuration for a frequency of 5,000 miles. I'd go ahead and name it you can name it whatever you like. So I'll name it 5,000 mile recommendation. I of course have selected service frequency as the type of configuration. Here I'm going to tell the system the actual mileage interval. So I want that to be 5,000, of course. What is the monthly interval? I'm going to put 5 months. And the last thing we need to set is when we want the system to actually use this configuration. So there's two options. Option one is always use my interval and basically ignore the OEM recommendation and just put mine on top. Option number two is to use the OEM recommendation, but if there is no OEM recommendation, then fall back onto my recommendation. So that's the one I'm going to use. I'd rather use the OEM where possible, but if there is an instance where the OEM doesn't have a recommendation, then we'll default back to this 5,000 mile recommendation. So I'm going to click that and I'm going to hit save. So now we've created the service configuration, but we haven't linked it yet to any of the existing services. So that's the next thing we're going to do. We're going to go back to our services over here. And let's say we want to do this on our cabin air filter. So I'm going to click here. Now, pretty much all of the OEMs are going to have recommendations for cabin air filter. However, if one of them for some reason doesn't, then we're going to fall back on the recommendation that we just created. So I'm going to go here under my shop one, hit add configuration, and we're going to add that 5,000 mile recommendation and hit save. Now you'll see I just added it for one shop. I have multiple shops, so I could put it on all of them or one or two. You can make different, of course, service configurations for different shops if you wanted to. But in most cases, you'll likely use the same one. Okay. So we've talked about service frequency. Next, let's talk about inventory display. So again, by default, and I recommend if you haven't already gone through and set up your packages and the rest of your setup and played with the orders a bit, I would say do all that first and come back to this configuration section. It'll probably make a bit more sense to you. But basically, when you're servicing a car, you're going to select your package, and then the subsection of your service will show up, and a bunch of your parts are going to show up as part of that service. So for example, if you're doing a cabin air filter, all of your cabin air filters are going to show up, and that's just by default. When all your cabin air filters show up, you can manually select, hey, just show me the ones that fit this vehicle based on the part catalog, or just show me the filter that I used last time on this car. So you can do all that today already. Now what this does for you is if you only want to see the part you used last time, or you only want to see the parts that fit this vehicle, you can use a service configuration to make that happen by default, so you don't need to click that toggle every single time you're servicing a car. So for example, I'm going to create one here that's going to auto show the parts that are going to fit the vehicle based on the part catalog. Once you've named the configuration, of course, you're going to select which option you want to use. So I want to use inventory display. And now there's going to be two options like I mentioned. So automatically show part catalog verified items, or automatically show the previously used items on this car. So in this case, I want to automatically show the parts that are verified by the catalog. And I'm going to hit save. Okay, so now I have that. Again, now I need to go to my services and set on which services do I want this to happen. So let's say for cabin air filter, I might have some no-name filters that maybe are not going to get verified by the catalog because they're no-name filters and they're not in the catalog. So maybe I don't want to use it on cabin air filter. But if I know I have all branded oil filters that are in the catalog, let's put it on that instead. So here's my engine oil filter remove and replace service. I'm going to click on the access again, and under shop one, I'm going to add the configuration for auto verified by part catalog, and I'm going to hit save. Now again, here this doesn't look too different. It's not super evident what's happening, but now what would happen is when I am servicing a vehicle and I go to select my oil filters, the system is automatically going to filter out all the oil filters that don't fit the vehicle and just show me the few that fit this vehicle that I'm working on. As long as your parts are in the part catalog, that's perfect. But if you have no name or unbranded parts that aren't in the catalog, then none of your filters would show up and you'd have to hit the toggles and figure out which filter you want to use. So again, play with the system a little bit, see how that kind of looks when you're working on a vehicle, and then you can come back to these configurations and make modifications. That's it for servicing.